Here's the brief news from the world over this week. The first presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is in the books. The showdown was the most watched presidential debate ever, with 84 million viewers. Among the highlights, Clinton emphatically denounced Trump for not releasing his personal tax returns, suggesting that he's hiding something. And Trump repeatedly cast Clinton as a typical politician, as he sought to capitalize on Americans' frustration with Washington. Most pundits thought Clinton had the edge over Trump, but many online polls suggested that Trump won the debate. Ultimately, those undecided voters will have the last word.
These solutions right now. For 30 years you've been doing it, and now you're just starting to think of solutions.
Well, actually,
I will bring back jobs. You can't bring back jobs.
Well, actually, I have thought about this quite a bit.
Yeah, for 30 years.
I have, well, not quite that long. I think my husband did a pretty good job in the 1990s. I think a lot about what worked and how we can make it work again.
Well, he approved
3 million
NAFTA.
new jobs,
He approved
a balanced
NAFTA,
budget,
which is the single worst trade deal ever approved in this country.
More on the debate and what the candidates said about their economic plans in our next segment with Larry Kudlow. And Congress voted to override President Obama's veto of a bill that would allow families of 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia for allegedly backing the hijackers. The vote was overwhelming, 97-1 in the Senate, while the House of Representatives voted 349-77. It was the first time an Obama veto has been overridden. The president called the move by Congress a mistake that set a dangerous precedent.
Is that if we eliminate this notion of sovereign immunity, then our men and women in uniform around the world could potentially start seeing ourselves subject to reciprocal laws.
Supporters of the override called it necessary to give 9/11 families the chance to seek justice against foreign sponsors of terror. The lone vote in the Senate against the override was Minority Leader Harry Reid. Democratic candidate for Vice President Tim Kaine and Senator Bernie Sanders were no-shows for the vote. And tensions are escalating in Syria as the battle for Aleppo continues. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry warned his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, that Washington will cut off all contact with Russia if Russian and Syrian government forces continue to attack rebel-held parts of Aleppo. According to the UN, more than 200 people have been killed there, including more than 100 children. Russian media reports that at least 20 churches in the area have been destroyed by rebel forces. Aleppo Bishop Antoine Audo told the Associated Press that the situation in Syria has forced more than half of the Christians to leave and that dialogue is needed to end the bloodshed.
And this is a very bad situation for us, for everybody, for all Syrian, and for the church in particular. The solution is not in the military solution. The solution is political. And for us as Syrian, political solution and coming from inside Syria with the support of the United States. Helping
On Thursday, Pope Francis lamented the continued plight of Christians in Syria and elsewhere. He offered his thoughts to those who suffer the consequences of violence and look to the future with fear in the midst of so much darkness. The latest bombardment has been some of the worst in Syria's 5-year civil war, and it comes after the failure of a short-lived ceasefire brokered by the U.S. and Russia earlier this month. And this week saw the passing of former Israeli President Shimon Peres. The Nobel Peace Prize winner was 93 when he died on Wednesday, 2 weeks after suffering a major stroke. Peres, who as foreign minister led Israel into peace talks with the Palestinians in the mid-1990s, was celebrated as a peacemaking visionary abroad, but was a controversial figure in his own country. As foreign minister, Peres secretly brokered the historic Oslo interim peace accords with the Palestinians, signed at the White House in 1993. For his efforts, he shared the 1994 Nobel Prize with Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. A career statesman, Perez ran 5 times for prime minister, never winning the office. His only election victory came in 2007, when the parliament chose him as president, a largely ceremonial position. May he rest in peace. And the Vatican has told the UN that its controversial Sustainable Development Goals must be based on authentic and absolute respect for life. The remarks were made by Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin, speaking this past week at the UN General Assembly. He noted that while the Sustainable Development Goals seek to end poverty, protect the environment, and promote well-being and prosperity, they also include language calling for universal access to sexual and reproductive health care, code words, Parolin suggested, for contraception and abortion. And some 400,000 people filled the streets of Mexico City on Saturday in protest against the government's attempt to redefine marriage. President Enrique Peña Nieto supports legalizing same-sex marriage and adoption across the country. Led by the National Front for the Family Party, it was one of the largest demonstrations seen in Mexico in years. On Sunday, Pope Francis lent his support to the protesters, who are, quote, in favor of family and life, which in these times require special pastoral and cultural attention around the world, end quote. Same-sex marriage is legal in the capital, Mexico City, and 9 of Mexico's 31 states. In June of last year, the country's high court ruled that it was unconstitutional for Mexican states to bar gay marriages. Mexican bishops have strongly opposed the measures. And 3 cardinals are among the thousands who have signed a declaration affirming the Church's teaching on marriage. This in response to what signatories claim are widespread errors about the true meaning of marriage, particularly following the Synod on the Family and the publication of the Pope's exhortation Amoris Laetitia, titled Declaration of Fidelity to the Church's Unchangeable Teaching on Marriage and to Her Uninterrupted Discipline. It's such a catchy title. The document states that there is an urgent moral duty to reaffirm the immemorial teachings of the Catholic magisterium on family and marriage. To that end, it reiterates the Church's teaching on chastity, marriage cohabitation, same-sex unions, civil remarriage after divorce, the state of grace and state of sin, as well as the sacraments of reconciliation and the Eucharist. Cardinals Raymond Burke, Carlo Cafara, and Janis Pujats are among the church leaders who signed the document. And on the bioethics front, the birth of a child conceived with the DNA of 3 people was announced this week. The baby boy was born in April following a new and controversial method utilizing DNA from 2 women and 1 man. A team of U.S. doctors performed the procedure in Mexico for a Jordanian couple in an attempt to bypass a genetic disorder carried by the mother. The new procedure is one that closely resembles cloning, also called nuclear cell transfer. The process is banned in the U.S., but embryologists are hailing it as a giant step in correcting flaws in parents' DNA. Critics question the safety of the procedure, as well as the ethical concerns that arise from tinkering with human embryos. More on all of this later in the show. And for the first time in centuries, an ancient biblical scroll can be read thanks to computer scanning technology. The scroll, discovered in a dig at a synagogue near the Dead Sea city of En-Gedi in 1970, is believed to be from the 1st century. The scroll was badly burned and thought too brittle to open. The feat of recovering the text was made possible by software programs developed by W. Brent Seals at the University of Kentucky. Using cross scans of the unraveled scroll, the software was able to reconstruct a clear text from damaged and otherwise unreadable material. The scroll's content? 2 chapters of the book of Leviticus. It is hoped that the new computer technique could reveal the contents of other unreadable scrolls, including some of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And last week I told you of the first ever Olive Mass, a national gathering to honor those in the food and hospitality industry, to be held in New Orleans. The Table Foundation, founded by Father Leo Patalinghug, who hosts a program on EWTN, organized the Olive Mass at the St. Louis Cathedral in beautiful Jackson Square. The idea was to pray for chefs and all of those in the hospitality industry who in their own special way spread the gospel through their work. Well, the Mass went off, and New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Raymond has offered to host it again next year. And finally, two amazing events to tell you about for those of you in the New York area. If you or your children love the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Wonder, I'm hosting a very special live story-oriented conversation this Sunday, October 2nd, with author R.J. Palacio. She'll join me at the Sheen Center for an amazing conversation and book signing. Don't miss this very special event. For tickets, go to sheencenter.org for all the details, and we may even take some of your questions. I'm also hosting a live conversation with my pal Mel Gibson in Orange County on October 20th at the Freed Theater on the Christ Cathedral campus. We'll be discussing Mel's career, his new movie Hacksaw Ridge. Tickets are very limited. I've posted a link on my Facebook and Twitter pages. Go to RaymondArroyo.com for more info on both of these events.